he said, we've walked away. He said these negotiations are over. Barnier, of course, the master of the 11th hour deal, isn't quite accepting that. But what's your feeling? Is this the end of the road?
Well, I think, as I've always said with Boris, you have to watch what the hands are doing, not what the mouth is saying. So I've always been consistent in my view that the best deal for the UK is a clean break Brexit. So I'm hoping that Boris is true to his word. I think so far David Frost has discharged his duties very well. I just hope that there isn't going to be a further sort of resiling by our negotiating team. I mean, we've since the beginning, if you watch what Theresa May did, the foreign what basically our civil service does, the British people gave their view, and we've got the enemy within negotiating with the European Union. So ultimately, they have never taken what our politicians say seriously, because they think that we fear leaving with no deal, when in actual fact, that's the best deal for us. We have a massive trade deficit with Europe. They send lorry loads of their own goods over to us, which we purchase. And many of those lorries go back empty because we aren't exporting the same amount to them that they export to us. So I feel we just need to see some backbone from Boris, some backbone from the government. They've been given a very clear steer by the British people as to what we want. And ultimately, if the Europeans will not engage in what I describe as fair, decent, honest negotiation with us, which is not what they've been doing, ultimately, the best thing we can do is walk away. That's what you have to do in any normal negotiation. If you go to a souk in any of the Arab countries, the first price that you're given is never the price that they will accept, and you have to be prepared to walk away to get the best price. So I think we have to be prepared to walk away. I hope Boris does walk away. And I'm firmly of the view that if we actually do walk away, we reform our civil service, we reform the organs of the state, Britain will be in a purple patch going forward, because we will be dealing with the growing parts of the world, not the sclerotic protectionist Europe, which accounts now for less than 15% of global GDP.
Now, I think at the heart of the breakdown of these talks has been what is actually a French insistence that even though we will be given our sovereign waters, obviously, when we leave the EU, our seas become ours and no one else's. We would be prepared to allow the French, the Spanish, the Scandinavians to fish in our waters, but on our terms. The French, utterly unreasonably, in my view, won't have that. They say, yes, you can have your sovereign seas, but we have to be allowed to fish them, and it's nothing to do with you. Well, that's ridiculous. So it's the French insistence that that must be the deal that means we cannot sign up to it. That's the crux of the problem, isn't it?
Exactly. Well, if you look at the deprivation in many of our coastal towns and communities, that is a direct consequence of what's happened with regard to the fishing. And if you, which I did when I was in the European Parliament, if you do a study of where our fish is processed, most of the fish that we eat in the UK is now processed in Holland. Most of the food is processed in Germany. And, you know, because of the open nature of our economy, many of our businesses have been bought up by European businesses, and the jobs have been shifted to mainland continental Europe. So not only has the fishing industry suffered, also the processing industries have suffered. So there's a massive opportunity for our government not only to take back our waters, and it may well be that, as you say, we negotiate annual licenses with those people who wish to fish in them. They have to negotiate on the basis that they are our waters, their fish are our fish, and they have to enter into commercial negotiations with us. But ultimately, there's a huge opportunity to enhance and build our fishing fleet, as well as enhancing and building the actual ability to process both food and fish onshore UK, where a lot of it's actually consumed. So I think from a Green point of view, that makes sense. From a British point of view, that makes sense. And in many ways, I think, the British people have suffered from this uneven playing field, which has been brought about by, the sort of the post-war European plan, which had to, in a way, break up the British Union, which it's pretty close to doing.
Having been in, sorry, so carry on, Rupert. Sorry.
You can over to you, Kevin. Over to you.
I was going to say, having been in the European Parliament, been over there a lot, you must have some knowledge of Macron. Macron is the one who's dug his heels in about these fishing rights. Now, if we don't get a deal, our sovereign seas become ours. How do you think he'll react when we inevitably have to turn around and say, well, you didn't do a deal with us, you can't fish our waters at all? Do you think he might buckle, or will he, in his Gallic way, continue to stay strong on that one?
Well, I think the essence of the agreement that we've got with Europe is that they should negotiate in good faith, which I don't think they've been doing. Now, France, as you know, we've had a fairly up and down relationship with the French for many generations. They're an extremely proud people. I have actually met Michel Barnier. As a man, I like him. He's very proud. He's a decent man. I think he's highly principled. But at the end of the day, the top of his agenda is France and the French. Yes. And that's the same with Macron. So what we need to see from Boris and from our leaders is, let's have the British people put at the top of their agenda. And let's be prepared to actually walk away. And I think we will be amazed at how the Europeans have to come running, because you can feel the pressure mounting in Germany and in other parts of Europe where they export large quantities of cars and other engineering products to the UK. You can feel the pips beginning to squeak. And I think if the politicians in Europe, and it's the right thing for Europe to do a deal with us, it's the right thing for the British to do a deal with Europe. But if they dig their toes in and they force us, they will be ultimately the bigger losers, because they have a trade surplus with us. We do not have a trade surplus with them. And, the Remainers all say, oh, but we do a lot of trade with Europe. Yes, we do, but we actually have a massive deficit of trade with Europe. So the cards are all in our hand. The problem is, as I say, the enemy lies within our establishment, because most of the establishment don't believe in leaving the EU. They want to remain part of a cozy, protectionist post-war racket, which is dying. I mean, it's dying on its feet. If you look at Europe as a percentage of global GDP, it's a sclerotic loser. It's not a winner. And the problem is that the whole of the European establishment has this, in my view, misguided view of their own self-importance within the global hierarchy. So I think what we need to do is break away, trade with Europe. I'm very happy to trade with Europe, but let's have our sovereignty back, and let's be prepared to trade with those parts of the world that ultimately are growing, that are vibrant, that actually want what we have to offer. And let's face it, Britain has always had a hell of a lot to offer, and that's not going to change, because we've got some of the most talented people in the world.